Welcome to MTV Studio. I'm Kat Hurd. I'm here today with Dr. Eric Cornelius of Pisa and Grace Caballero with Nevro Globus. So, thank you both for being here with me today. I know that there's such a powerful story of partnership and collaboration and driving success in patient outcomes. So, Dr. Cornelius, why don't you start us off? Tell us about the partnership and collaboration that you and Grace have.
Well, I would say that it's more than a partnership. I would say it's a friendship, a collaboration. You can call it a synergistic partnership. I've known Grace for better of 13 years.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot of transition together. And not only do I consider her a friend, but also a colleague as well, too. And she also happens to be one of my patients. I'm pretty sure we're going to share that part of the story as well, too. And one thing that I just know about Grace, and I've known from the very beginning, is authenticity, humility, the desire to just do the right thing for the right patient at all times, right? So just doing the right thing, even if it's sacrificing yourself a little bit. And so and I think that because of that philosophy, we've been able to continue to inspire one another to be the best version of ourselves. And I think that we both have kind of progressed and grown in our careers with this ability to be able to continue to help each other through some turbulent moments or some low moments, but also be able to celebrate our wins together too. So it's been a great relationship.
Well, that partnership is so important. Certainly on the industry side, and Grace, you obviously have a depth of experience in the neuromodulation world, and certainly I'm sure I've loved getting to partner with Dr. Breeders.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. We started out pretty much because I came to this industry a little bit later in life, and he was, a young physician when we started out. And I remember my first cases with him, and I was so nervous. And it's been an honor, really, just to watch him grow and develop and just spread and just touch so many people.
And Dr. Cornelius, I think one of your superpowers, and there are many, because I've also had the pleasure of knowing you for close to 15 years
That's
now, I
right.
think it
Yeah.
is. But one of your superpowers is how connected you are in the community and how consistent you are in driving support and resources and access and really democratizing that. That I know your goal in moving back to Tucson was to create access for your community, access to care, and that you're really particular about doing that for every patient, every time, as if they were your family member. I know you and Grace have a storied experience with that. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that recent partnership with Grace?
So that the recent partnership or a part of our relationship, I want to say that I first and foremost, I always say that, passion is something you love doing and that you're really good at, I think. But purpose is being able to use that passion for good, right? So just make the community better, make the world better, make your space better, like, whatever you're touching. And I think that one of the things that I've been blessed with, is that opportunity to make an impact in a community that really impacted me. And so with that, the stars aligned for us to be able to help Grace through a situation that was quite challenging for her. She was facing some medical issues and was basically stuck at one of our hospitals that didn't have the services that she really needed. And I found out about that because her colleague was actually covering the cases that she was supposed to be covering. And I asked her what was wrong, and she says something's going on with Grace. And I'm operating at the same time and kind of quarterbacking, patient care. And then, her colleague, just started crying and says, Grace is not well. And so found out that, she was basically stuck at this hospital, needed to be transferred to a different hospital that had the resources to be able to help her through that. I call it a life-threatening situation. And just through the day, I was able to quarterback as I'm operating. I'm able to quarterback through my nurse and kind of go through my phone and call the right people. And fortunately, we've been able to establish over the last decade just strong relationships with the community. We're talking about CEOs of hospital groups, politicians, community leaders, like nurses. I mean, you name it, just different people that are always willing to help. And what I love about the community that I'm a part of is that everybody just realizes they're a part of something that's much bigger than themselves. And that's something that we've been able to sort of leverage and capitalize and take advantage of, is the fact that, we're all in it together. How do we help each other out? So to try to make a long story, just a little bit shorter, is that just throughout the day, we're able to get Grace not just a transfer, Because one thing I did say to her colleague was saying, if I have to go myself and get in my Jeep, pick her up and take her there myself, I will. And fortunately, I didn't have to, because we were able to sort of pull that off. And not only were we able to get her transferred, but have her access to the immediate care that she really needed, and basically save her life.
He did. He did. And he moved mountains to do this. He was calling everybody, like you said, from CEOs, and it was critical. My life was on the line. And it's interesting because I wasn't aware of all the work that was going on behind, because I was completely out of it. But I do remember this part is once they got me transferred and they literally got me to the hospital that could care for me, rolled me into surgery, and the cardiologist who I had not met up until that point, they said, he wants to ask you something before we put you under. He lifts the drape and leans over. He goes, I just want to know, who are you? Because of what had happened, and they got this VIP in there. It wasn't a VIP. This was the VIP who managed to get me there and save my life.
Wow, what a beautiful story. And I think it's a testament to not only the relationship and camaraderie and partnership that you built, but also Grace. And I know we shared this at the start. You're a patient, and Dr. Cornelius sees it as well. And I think knowing you and knowing the impact you've made on your community, you do work like this. And Grace, first off, I actually should pause again. I'm very glad that you are here with us and that you are healthy. Right? That's so important. So thank you, Dr. Cornelius, for allowing that to happen. But this is how you care for your patients on a regular basis.
Correct.
This is the care you show in the community. And so, Grace, why don't you tell us, so you are also a patient of Dr. Cornelius's, share a little about that.
Okay. Well, so the event that I had was a cardiac event, and so this isn't tied into that as far as me being a patient, but I've had a spinal stimulator since 2005, and it was a low frequency one. And so through this whole event that I was experiencing, my back was, I was in the hospital for a month. I was in that hospital bed. It was awful, and something happened with it, and so I was out of work for 4 months, and I was in a walker again because I was having difficulty, and he helped me with injections and management, bridged me through that to where I could get back to work. And through that time, the device that I had at the time wasn't giving me the same relief that it used to. And so it was it was reaching its end of life, and I asked him if he could upgrade my device to the Never one, because I knew what it was capable of doing just through my work experience, being able to program these patients and have all of these options. I wanted that as well. And so he replaced it, and I went from getting 40% relief on a bad day, on a really good day, maybe 60% relief, to now I'm getting 90 to 95% relief with the Never device consistently. Yeah.
I mean, that in and of itself could be a whole discussion, and it is a whole powerful story, because the idea of rescue therapy is so important, because
It is.
There's so many patients like yourself that have devices that maybe the efficacy has changed, and that now that therapy algorithms and treatment algorithms, programming algorithms in neuromodulation have evolved so much that there's so many more options accessible to patients. So that's so exciting to hear. And now I have to ask, and then I have a question for you, Dr. Cornelius. But Grace, I have to ask, are you now running a high frequency program? What does your programming look like now?
It's amazing. So the majority of the time, probably about 95% of the time, I'm on a high frequency 10,000 hertz program. I'm on a pulse dose. So it's a 2% pulse dose. So I only have to charge my device once every 2 months, and I'm getting that kind of relief. I do, however, have a low frequency program for when I'm on long flights, long drives, because I'll get breakthrough pain, and that helps with that. And I love the beauty of that, being able to have those options within the same device.
Yeah, it's so powerful to know that you have choices. Right? As a patient, that has to feel really powerful. As a physician, that has to be also just equally powerful to know that you're utilizing technology that can flex with your patient. So walk us through your decision. I know Grace made the request, but when you explore rescue therapy for your neuromodulation patients, what things are you considering?
It's a great question, but before I answer that question, I do want to comment on one thing, is that the earlier comments about me, quote unquote, being the hero, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I did nothing special. I really didn't. I really think it was just something that we would have done for any one of our patients. Another thing too, I will say, is that being able to build that kind of relationship with not only just people you work with, but just people in the community in your circle, if you will, to be able to do what they want or do what they can, excuse me, to make sure that we do the right thing for patients. I think everybody just enjoys doing that.
Well, and let's pull on that thread for a minute, and then we'll come back to the rescue therapy.
Yeah.
But I think that's also really what you all, as an Aspen board and Aspen community, are. I hate to say evangelizing, but driving towards,
Absolutely.
right? That helping younger generations, those young innovator physicians,
Absolutely.
understand the power of building community, of knowing not just your colleagues across the country, but your colleagues next door, the administrators, as you indicated, having a clear connection to everyone in the healthcare algorithm, and how powerful that makes that from an experience standpoint and from a success standpoint.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always talk about iron sharpened iron as one iron sharpens the other, because I mean that's the goal, right? And even we'll talk just a little bit about the partnership between industry and provider. So historically, it was more the providers up here, and what can industry do to serve the provider, but that's not a true synergistic relationship. How do we bring out the best in one another and hold each other accountable to continue to do the right thing? Because ultimately, we're here for the patients. And we could either, do one of two things. Industry could kind of support providers to be able to, help, a patient or two at a time, or can we leverage each other's strengths and mask each other's weaknesses, by leveraging each other's strengths to help the masses. And that's the goal, right? I think that, when you and I, for example, when we came into this, into this space, we just realized that we have to leave this space better than when we found it.
So,
And so, but the cool thing about all that, it almost feels like less work because it's more meaningful and it's a lot more rewarding.
yeah, it is. It's the connection, and
Absolutely.
past connection. It's that collaboration and understanding that you are on the same team. And I think that that's something that is a hallmark of Aspen. It's a hallmark of, how, like you said, how we built our careers, and how, when you look at it as a collaboration with the patient and their outcomes at the fore, then all the decisions you make around it come naturally.
Absolutely.
Because you know what your why. You said it. Passion is great, but the purpose is where that passion meets action. Having that sense of purpose, that patient
Absolutely.
being the purpose,
Yeah.
is really so powerful. And I think that actually really does lead us really nicely into talking about rescue therapy, of keeping the purpose not on a vendor, not on a one specific type of therapy, but understanding what is right for that patient. So how do you consider moving into a rescue therapy, and maybe as you did with Grace, shifting a patient's device to a different technology?
That's a great question. And I can answer that question a little bit by discussing sort of what's the best thing I learned out of medical school. And there were three things that I learned in medical school. I went to Stanford for medical school, so pretty darn good school. But I will say that the three basic things that I really learned, and the young docs that I mentor along the way, I tell them these three things: is that you treat a patient not just some diagnostic study. Sometimes we're so focused on sort of the widget or the MRI finding or just like something else without really focusing on the patient first. Number two is listen to your patient, right? Is that and Grace does a real good job at that too. Is that putting the needs of the patient first, but really listening to what the patient's needs really are, as opposed to making this assumption like I know better than you and I'm going to do something for you. It should be a relationship. And number three, and the most important thing, is that you treat a patient like you would a family member, right? And so when I'm talking to patients about particular therapies, I have that in mind. Like, what would I want my mother to receive? And so if my mother's struggling with some kind of disease process, and there's a therapy that gives a variety of platforms that we could capitalize on the technology and the advances that we made in technology to make sure that we get the best outcomes possible, then, I mean, to me, it's a pretty simple process. So it's not a difficult decision to make. And once you kind of keep that your North Star, is always do the right thing for the patient. Everything else, I promise you, everything else will follow.
Yeah, well, and as you said, just the flexibility that the system offers to be able to have all those options for patients, and know that when you are re-implanting an IPG in them, they now have an IPG that has the ability to do many different things, because their pain, pain changes over time.
Exactly.
You live it, we see it daily, and so having that flexibility, I have to imagine, is really powerful for you.
It definitely is. It's powerful, and it's funny because I would say, 10, 15 years ago, it was actually challenging, because our options were limited,
Yeah.
right? But now, just all the innovation, and I really think the innovation really came from developing a true partnership where industry really steps up to the plate and hears the concerns of the provider, saying we're struggling with this disease process. How can we help our patients through that? And because that that open line of communication to be able to really embrace the provider's needs, like this is our concern, get their best engineers out and and really embrace the technology and really embrace our resources that we're able to invest in that. So it's just been really exciting to be able to partner up with with Grace and a company that really allows us that capacity to do that.
That drives that forward. And that
Yeah.
actually brings me, because I think one of the things Nevro has done so beautifully is listen, to your point. And when you listen, you hear opportunities to advance care. And I know PDN is now the newest and most emerging diagnosis that you all are treating with Nevro. Talk to me a little bit about PDN and how maybe you're previously treating that and now how that's been advanced with Nevro expanding the indications.
Thanks for the question, because I would say that there's no other more frustrating to diagnosis that you read on a patient's chart than PDN, because historically, unfortunately, their options are very, very limited, and the options that we did have, they really weren't really that good. If you look at just sort of all the medications that are available, and historically were available for PDN, and realizing that when I'm writing this prescription, I know there has to be something better, but unfortunately, there is not right now. And if you look at the number needed to treat towards effective care and all that stuff, like you almost like you're setting yourself for failure, and I kind of accept the failure at that until HF10 it really changed the way that we look at this. So now when I see that diagnosis, no longer I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to help this one. I'm like, wow, I have a solution for this patient. And so what I love more about this than anything else is that for the first time ever, it's not just a pain management thing. And so all the therapies we offer, we're really honed down and focused on, okay, the pain physicians recommend this therapy. This is much bigger than that. I mean, we're talking about the American Diabetes Association. We're talking about ACE, which is the American College of Endocrinologists, and just different specialties really embracing this therapy, saying that this actually works with minimal side effects, no side effects, but minimal risks, and puts us in a much better place for what we keep talking about for our patients.
Yeah, the patient at the core of it. And so, have you all taken this out into the Tucson community, and are you collaborating now with the podiatrists that are treating these PDN patients? Because I have to imagine some existed in your practice, certainly, but there have to be so many patients out there that could benefit from this therapy that don't even know it exists right now.
Absolutely. So we are going throughout the community. We're meeting with podiatrists, endocrinologists, attending health fairs and conferences just to educate that this is available now, and they're eager for it because, like you said, the options before this were so limited, and the outcomes are phenomenal. 9 out of 10 patients that try it will respond to it, and on average, they'll get about 80% relief. And everything that it's affecting, their sensory symptoms. I have patients saying that I can feel my feet again. They don't feel like blocks of wood. I don't have to look at my toes to see if they're wiggling.
What's funny is I do want to comment on this. Have you noticed that we kind of just gave each other the look? Me first answer that question, or after you answer that question. Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
It's because let's go back to talk about what we first talked about in the very beginning about relationship and the power in that. And so one thing I will say is that I will forever grateful and blessed that I have the graces of the world to be able to really be an advocate for our patients. And I say our patients because we work together collaboratively to help these patients, right? They're not my patients. They're our patients, right? And so they have provided so much effort, energy, resources to be able to recruit Tucson to really look at this differently. And what I love about this entire situation is that historically Tucson is a place where they kind of looked at neuromodulation. I'm talking about referring providers and the community of Tucson as far as patients goes, as neuromodulation being something that's not effective and having the issue of loss of efficacy. But with the new technology, the new data, and good quality data at that, and the outcomes that we're getting to, we're changing the way that we look at neuromodulation in that community. And how powerful is that? to change the culture and change what we think about or how we think about certain, therapies. And the reason for the look is because even working with a lot of just different practices, larger practices, and really making some strides in allowing them access to this kind of therapy. And so it's funny because where we used to cringe before with that, and everybody used to cringe at the diagnosis, now we're actually pretty excited about that too. There's a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy for that.
Well, excited, and just to know that you have a pool of patients that you can support now.
There's hope.
Yeah, you can give them that hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a powerful foundation to use patients. So that's really, really special. Something else that I imagine has to be very exciting is obviously the recent Globus acquisition of Nevro. So Dr. Fernandez, I would love to hear, what has you excited about this new, influence of Globus and what that transition has been like.
Yeah, so and I really appreciate that question because it kind of speaks to everything we talked about before. The idea of iron sharpening iron, and the fact that being able to leverage strengths and minimize weaknesses by appropriate collaboration. And this is exactly what we see, and we're very hopeful about the acquisition of Globus, and I would say the partnership of Globus and everyone, sort of how that really looks like. Because now we have access to a lot more bright-minded individuals, a lot more resources, a lot more dedication, and doubling down on what we want to do to change the space that we're in, right? In other words, our goal is to always challenge the status quo, right? To make things better when you can do better, right? Strive for excellence. And so we just think that this partnership that Globus, is involved with now is a great opportunity for us to double down on those efforts. And so we're going to hold them accountable. We're definitely going to, just make sure that, that the standard of care and the way that we do things, don't just stay the same, but they continue to get better. So we're excited about it.
And what a beautiful synergy now as we continue to advance the space and bring, spine and pain even closer together to now have a spine company that has, a pain division. And so it's the perfect, I think, evolution of where we're headed.
Correct.
And I'm excited to see what Globus brings to you all and how they continue to expand Nevro's impact to the market. So thank you both for being here with me today. Thank you, Grace, for sharing your story. Thank you for your experience as a patient. And Dr. Fernandez, thank you for sharing your patient-centered journey and the way that you practice care. So I appreciate you both, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.